As we know, since 2015, when he announced he was running for president, Trump has been somewhat of a polarizing figure. Most people have strong opinions about him either way. Also, if you walk down the street, see a lot of his properties, the name Trump is splashed on the side in front of the building. Have his assets been impacted by the nature of his polarization because he is a political figure? Has that impacted them at all?
So I think a lot of the attention on this question has focused on sort of the drawbacks for Trump. Are liberals and Democrats not going to his properties? They're not buying his condos. They don't want to go to his resorts or something. And we do see some of that. For example, his Doral resort, which we were talking about before, really suffered when he was president. Folks didn't want to go there. But with that said, it's recovered. We've seen a lot of that kind of effect drop away as his presidency has kind of faded. It was a couple of years ago now, and so that effect has kind of disappeared. And I would say that I think it would be hard to see him creating a social media company that has such explosive value and growth right now if it were not for his presidency and his politics. And so one could make the argument that he has benefited immensely. He's even made billions off of politics, just from Truth Social alone. I think if we're counting that. Now, again, that said, Truth Social's valuation is kind of highly debatable. Again, investor consensus is that there's a lot of meme stock mania behind that. So we'll see whether that value actually continues to stay up or not. It has fallen quite a bit even since it went public. So that's kind of open to interpretation.
Kyle, as we know, there was good news for the former president this week in the New York case. He was able to post his $175 million bond in that civil fraud case against him and his company for now. So does $175 million still hurt him, considering his net worth is over $5 billion?
So yes and no. Strictly speaking, in Forbes' estimates, we're not deducting the bond amounts from his net worth right now. We're instead just deducting the full legal liability that he has. So we're deducting that full $540 million of legal liabilities between those two cases. With that said, we're also saying he still has estimates about $400 million in cash right now. That's a pretty big cash pile, but a majority of it is now essentially collateral for these two bonds, between the $175 million bond that he got in his fraud case and about a $90 million bond that he got in the E. Jean Carroll case. So between those two, that's sucking up most of his liquid assets. It could potentially weigh on his ability to run his business effectively if he wants to pay off more debts or if he needs a big cash infusion into one of his companies. He won't be able to access that cash quite as easily because it's locked up as collateral for these bonds.
Kyle, Trump's finances have made you very busy because, as we all know, your beat is money in politics. So when it comes to the former president's finances, what are you looking out for next? What's on your radar?
I really think there's three questions about his finances over the coming weeks, months, years even. The first one is, where does the value of Truth Social go? That is, like I said, a super majority of his net worth right now. And if the value continues to decline like it has since the IPO a week or two ago, we're going to see his net worth decline as well. If, on the other hand, it stays high, for whatever reason, it's propped up by institutional investors or by sort of the meme stock potential for it, he could cash out. And that could be, in 6 months, once the lockup provisions expire, he could cash out and potentially get his money into a more liquid form. The second question I have is whether appeals courts are going to give him any sort of reprieve for these legal liabilities. He's got, $540 million plus in legal liabilities. But if he wins any of these cases on appeal, which he very well could do, I don't know how these judges are going to rule. If that happens, then those liabilities will go away. That will boost his net worth. And we did see the appeals court in New York grant him a bond that is significantly lower than the overall judgment against him in the fraud case. That could indicate that maybe they're sympathetic to some of the arguments that the Trump team is making. We don't know. It's hard to say. We'll probably find out in the fall, I think, in that fraud case. And then the third question I have is, these two cases are not the only legal problems that he's having. I'm wondering about his legal expenses, how he's actually paying his lawyers. So far, he's been able to do so using donor money, but he's going to be running a presidential campaign. He is running a presidential campaign right now, and that's going to be competing for funds with his lawyers. And so if he's facing 4 different criminal cases in 4 different jurisdictions. That's New York, Florida, DC, and Georgia. He's going to be fighting all of those cases over the course of this year. He's going to be paying out millions of dollars in legal bills. At some point that might start to take a bite out of his cash pile as well.